See Beneath Your Beautiful podcast is raw and intimate, sometimes funny, and always entertaining. With new episodes every Saturday, Hara explores our loves, fears, and hopes with a delicious combination of depth and lightness. Today, we're interviewing Jen Johnson. And Jen, will you introduce yourself?
I'm Jen Johnson. I am a mom. I am a widow of 8.5 years. I am an advocate for other widows. I am a writer. And I am a messenger and hopeful inspirer of all things, including extraordinary love.
What are you writing, or what do you write?
A lot of it has been my experience being a widow. I've been on this journey for 8.5 years, and anyone who has been on a grief journey knows that it includes a lot of different roads and a lot of different ups and downs and a lot of great wisdom and growth that comes out of it. Mm-hmm. And so, I feel very passionate about putting those words out for other people to hopefully help them in their own journeys.
Right. How old are your kids now?
They are 13 and 15. Mm. They were 5 and 7 when my husband passed away of a sudden, unexpected heart attack the day after Christmas in 2012.
Mm. Thanks for telling me that, because I was reading What Not to Say to Anyone Grieving. And one of the things was, don't ask how somebody passed away. And I was like, well, how am I going to circumvent that?
Right. How can I possibly connect?
I need to know that. So that's interesting. Do you find it offensive if somebody asks you how he passed?
No, I don't, because I honestly now, after so much time, I've never been offended by somebody asking me, even in the early days. But as time has gone on, I've become more of an educator. Mm-hmm. And I really value that opportunity to educate someone, to let them know that, yes, somebody can have a heart attack at the age of 40 and have no prior health history. Oh. So it is actually important to me to tell that story. And I'm appreciative when people do ask.
Oh, good. Do you hear that a lot? Oh, what else was wrong with him? Or what did he have underlying conditions? Because that's what people are asking about COVID. You know, what was really wrong with them when nothing might have been?
Right. Sometimes it is just the thing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it really does come out of left field. There doesn't have to be any underlying thing. We did eventually find out there was a family history of heart disease. Mm-hmm. However, he had gone, his whole adult life, at least as far as I knew him, getting physicals every year, had blood work done. He didn't have a history of high cholesterol, high blood pressure. He ate well, he exercised, all of those things. There really could have been an underlying issue. I mean, there was genetically, but he took care of himself in every way otherwise.
That's terrible that you feel like you have to defend that. I mean, I'm just sorry that that's true.
For me, it comes back to education. People come with their perceptions, with their opinions, with their own thoughts and ideas. Everybody's a doctor. Everybody's an expert, so.
How are you educating people? How do you educate somebody who doesn't think they need education?
I have a very unique way of connecting with people about things like that has really been a gift to me in loss. And if it's just a casual conversation I'm having with someone and they come forward with an opinion or a thought or an expertise, I have a way of being able to circle that back to, it is different for everyone. When I talk about being a educator also of extraordinary love and living from a place of love, that's what it all comes back to for me, is everyone's experience on this earth is different. I try and, no matter what the topic is, try and open the door to a bigger conversation and widening the conversation to include a lot of different things that will just maybe hopefully open someone's mind to a possibility other than what they feel like they already know. But in terms of educating, it's not just those casual conversations. I, over time, have, I guess it was probably 3 months after my initial loss, I found a widows organization that I connected with online. And then about 18 months later, I started getting involved. And over the years, I have been able to mentor other widows. And, as an organization, we focus a lot on awareness and advocacy. So it comes in not just me educating, but my entire community getting out and educating others.
Is it a hard conversation to have with somebody? I would assume I don't really know what to ask. So is it hard for people to start a conversation with you about your husband? Do you want to talk about your husband?
Oh, I always want to talk about him, partly because he was just an amazing human.
Mm-hmm.
And I want his legacy to live on.
Right.
And he had such gifts in terms of his humor and his intelligence. And, those are things I feel like the world can benefit from me continuing to tell his story. But also I want to talk about it from the standpoint of everyone at some point in their life has an experience with grief, whether it's major or minor, whether it's at, the age of 39, like I was, or when you're a child, or when you're 90 and your spouse passes away. I think that those conversations have to become more normalized. They have to become part of normal conversations, just as much as we are talking about COVID, just as much as we are talking about, whatever other challenges there are. I know I personally want people to feel comfortable with the fact that grief exists and that they can move through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love this conversation. I interviewed somebody who's a death doula that helps people deal with grief and go through the dying process. And I think it's so beautiful because we don't talk about it. My mom passed away when I was 18, and I still want to talk about her. I want to talk about her, and I want my kids to know her. So I'm sure you feel that way for your kids, about your husband. How did you talk about it to your kids, and how do you do it differently now? Or how would you do it differently now? How is it to have that conversation with children? Because they were so young.
Yeah, they were. And honestly, the conversation changes, or the way the conversation is had changes every year.
Yeah.
Because children develop so differently year to year. When they were 5 and 7, and, my family and I had to tell them that their dad had died, their response then would be completely different than what it would be now.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to have that conversation with them today. How I would approach it would be different. But I'm honestly glad that I had to have that conversation with them at 5 and 7 versus 13 and 15, because my knowledge of grief and how to support them just wasn't there when they were 5 and 7. And they're not really going to remember that I didn't have that knowledge of support. Now I can talk to them about very easily. It's a very open conversation with us. It always has been. And not from a, gosh, we're so sad and we're drowning in grief place, but just a constant conversation about how we can grow through it, or what lessons we can take from it. And in fact, my kids just did a Zoom interview with the founder of the widows organization that I'm part of, talking about how kids view widowed moms.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was really fascinating because, as they've grown from 5 and 7 to 13 and 15, and their development has changed, their awareness has changed over time, they can see things in me that they wouldn't have seen at 5 and 7. The things that I know now, the lessons that I teach them. And they are now, because we've had so many of those conversations openly, there's been times we've cried together. There's been times we've laughed in talking about, certain funny things dad did, whatever it is. They're now able to take that experience they've had over the last 8.5 years and apply it to areas of their life. And one of those is, they've come across friends who have lost parents. My younger one actually went through the process of a dad dying of brain cancer with his friend and was able to be the support because he already had 5 years of grief behind him.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
In this interview that they did, last comment my older son made was, as grieving parents, as grieving adults in general, we cannot be afraid of talking to our kids about grief because they are going through it too. The way that they're processing is different. Where they are developmentally is different. Their awareness is different, but they're still going through it with us.
Right. Is there anything that people say to you that makes you crazy? Like for instance, for me, they're in a better place.
Yeah. The number one for me has always been, gosh, you're just so young. You're so young. And you have a whole life ahead of you. You can marry again. I remember someone saying that to me the week after he died. And I thought, okay, yes, from a logical standpoint, I know that I'm a resilient person. I know that I am a hopeful person. I know that I will heal. I know that I will come through this. And I know that I have a long life ahead of me that will probably include another partner at some point. But really, I'm just offended by it.
Right.
What if I chose differently for myself? And it diminishes the depth of that moment.
Right.
And the real sadness and healing that's going on simultaneously and is going to continue to have to go on for a long time.
Yeah. I looked this up, what not to say to anyone grieving. And that was one of them. Let's see what else. Only the good die young. God needed him more than you. People used to say that to me about my mom, that she was in a better place. And I really think that people who say those kind of things have not lost somebody. It doesn't matter, even if they are in a better place, no better places than with you. There's no better place than me having my mother.
And it really depends on a person's level of faith also and where they are in their beliefs. Because I was raised a really strong Catholic, a really strong Christian. I believe I'm more universally spiritual now. But as a Christian, at the time that my husband died, I can visualize that he's in heaven. He's with all our other loved ones who have passed away. He is, and he was an avid fisherman. And all I've ever visualized is like him sitting on some heavenly beach or heavenly river with his fishing rod with our dog. And, who wouldn't want to be there, right? That is a better place in some respects.
Mm-hmm.
And it really helped me to feel like maybe he was in this glorious place where there's no pain and there's no trauma, there's no challenges, there's just joy and love around you at all times, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
That's me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would never say that to another person because I don't know where they are in their faith.
Mm-hmm. No, I really appreciate that point of view. Thank you for that.
With a lot of widows that I mentor, at some point in the conversation, at some time, the topic of faith will come up. And as a mentor, you can find ways of pulling in a statement like that is going to be comforting. It's going to give them a little bit of guidance, a little bit of comfort in a way that is meaningful to them based on where they are. But to make it a blanket statement to someone based on, the person who's saying it based on their beliefs, not the beliefs of the person you're saying it to.
Oh, that's a real good point.
That's where I have the issue.
Well, and that might be it. I was raised a non-practicing Jew. And so I had no image of what a better place was. Maybe that is it. Oh, that's interesting. I never thought of that.
Your better place is with you. And my better place is with me also. It's with our kids. It's, not missing out on anything. But from a Christian standpoint, it's like, oh, there's no better place to be than with God.
Yeah, I get that. This is a fascinating topic for me also, that people keep saying they were Christians and now they're something different. How are you different in your belief system now that you're saying you're more universal? What's that mean?
Again, everybody's journey in this is so different. And for me, I have been so open since day one to discover whatever was going to aid in my healing. And that has come in so many different ways that I never would have expected. When my late husband first died, I picked up all these books about the people who have had near-death experiences that I could read. Oh, what did they see? What was that like? What could he have experienced when he was going through the death process? And, and then I also remember on his 1-year anniversary, a group of us went out to the location where he died, and he was on a mountain biking, and he fell off his bike, and his last visual on earth was laying on the road, looking up at the trees to the clear blue sky. Mm-hmm. And I laid down, and I don't know if it was the exact same spot, but a very similar spot in that place, and looked up and went, oh, wow, I feel so close to him right now in a very ethereal kind of way, mm-hmm. because I was in that same spot. I've had so many different experiences of hearing his voice, of feeling him touch me, of pennies appearing before me on the ground. so many different signs that might not really be aligned with Bible-based religions. But for me, I was like, well, I've got to be open-minded now. And I've always been pretty open-minded, but I've been open-minded in a way I never had been before, because I just kind of surrendered to the grief process. I surrendered to the universe and just said, okay, I clearly am in no control of anything.
Mm-hmm.
If a healthy 40-year-old man can die of a sudden heart attack, I don't know what's coming.
Right.
I don't know what any of my life really consists of or what could happen. So I'm going to surrender. I'm going to do everything in my power to find the tools and resources and community to heal myself and to make sure my kids are healed and healthy and happy. But otherwise, I'm surrendering it all. Actually, I was listening to your interview with Chris Angel, where he talked about the book, The Surrender Experiment. And that is one of my all-time favorite books. The process of surrendering to the universe and opening yourself up to all the possibilities of, really aids, not only in the healing process, but in guiding your life forward.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that universal thing means just being open to all.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
I have a friend who's a Jewish minister. I have a friend who is a Christian pastor. I have a friend who, I have all these friends of all these different faiths who have all contributed to my life over the last 8.5 years too. So I've been able to see spirituality from so many different directions. I feel like it's been this huge gift to go through that process.
Any way anybody can find peace is beautiful. And whatever shape that takes,
I mean, that's really the goal of life, right? is finding ultimate peace,
right,
and joy, right?
Right.
So being open to how that could come to you in any way it's just magic.
Right.
It's just magic. And that to me is why being kind of an educator of love also is so important, because you look at every different religion, every different spiritual belief out there. What does it all come back to? Love.
Yeah. Right.
If we looked at all of our fears, if we looked at all of our limitations and just let love guide the way in those, there's your peace and joy right there.
Right. I really love that. What's the name of the widows group that you're involved in?
Modern Widows Club.
Anybody who's lost a spouse can join. So that's men and women.
Just women right now. We actually are next month launching a Modern Widowers Club.
How many people are in the group? Is it like just a Facebook online community, or how big is it? What's going on with that?
We're actually a national nonprofit organization. We started in 2011. It was started by a woman named Carolyn Moore after she had lost her husband 11 years before that. And it started as a small, simple group of women getting together in her home in Orlando. And other women across the country kind of caught wind of it and said, hey, I want to do a group in my town. I want to do a group in my city. I want to do a group in my state. And it's now grown to, I think we're over 35 groups around the US now. And we have 3 or 4 internationally as well. So, I mean, we are serving thousands of widows, which to us is pretty just incredible because of where the organization has come from. But we also know that there's millions of widows who still need to be touched. There are 14 million widows roughly in the United States, 285 million worldwide, based on reports from 2015. So of course, those numbers are much greater now.
Mm-hmm.
And those widows are raising 585 million children around the world.
Wow.
I mean, we have just begun really to be able to tap into the needs of widows. We're not just focused on mentoring. Advocacy and awareness is so incredibly important to us. So we're trying to help create there is already an International Widows Day, which was observed by the United Nations, but we're now trying to create a National Widows Day, trying to make movements in awareness within policymakers across the country with bereavement leave. There's a number of initiatives that we have that are going to be and are as important, but just going to be just as impactful as the mentoring that we do.
Right.
As time goes on.
How can people help you? How can just anybody help you?
There's a number of ways that people can help. One is in advocacy itself. Anybody who has any sort of connections with policymakers anywhere in any state. I myself have been trying to connect with my local senators and my governor here in California, but policymakers anywhere, donors, we rely strictly on donations.
Okay.
We have a very small staff and we have a incredibly large team of volunteers, but we can always use more volunteers in every different way. But donations will help fuel us finding those people and continuing to serve the widows that we already do in our national groups. And we have a conference that we do once a year, which is actually coming up in September 19th or 17th through the 19th in Houston. It's called the Widow Empowerment Event. It includes a number of speakers from a number of different topics. I'm actually speaking on dating, getting back into dating following loss. We do that yearly just to have a place for widows to come to gather together in a space of community. And that really is what this entire organization was founded on and built on, is community, because building resilience, getting through the healing process and finding that pathway forward comes in surrounding yourself with others who have traveled your same journey.
I always say that you don't understand unless you've been through something. I mean, you can be empathetic, but you don't understand. You have just no idea.
That's absolutely right.
I'm sorry for you, but I have no idea what you're going through. So I'm glad that I understand about surrounding yourself with people who have also been there. So because you brought it up, I'm going to bring it up that, so you're dating, or you've tried to date.
Yep.
How's that going, especially with teenagers? And I was single for 13 years. And so I'm an expert on this horrible subject. Just curious, is it problematic for your teens? What's it like after, having the love of your life, I assume, or, somebody you loved so much and now trying to go on?
It's definitely interesting. And as you know, the dating process at this age,
the worst,
is a lot different than in your 20s. My late husband and I met in college. We didn't get together until after college, but we were married at 27, 28, and we were together for 14 years. And so I had obviously no experience of how dating has changed over time. I have viewed it as one of the greatest experiments of my life. I actually did not date for the first 5 years or so. Very quickly realized that I wanted to accomplish some things for myself first. I wanted to know that I was at a certain place in my healing process. I wanted to know that my boys were really content. In that time, I also decided to move from Seattle to Los Angeles. It's been a lot of amazing lessons in fine-tuning who I am and what it is I want in my life going forward. And the more that I fine-tuned my identity and really continued to discover things within myself, I was then able to fine-tune what it was that I was looking for. I have come forward with the best version of myself and have been really intentional, have been really intuitive. And I think that's the greatest lesson in all of it, that I'm not attached to the outcome of it. I am attached to how I approach it.
Oh, I really love that.
Again, I surrender that to the universe as well, just as much as everything else. I'm always about having the experience and grateful for the opportunity to, open myself up to someone, whether it's a friend or a man I date or whatever it is. This experience in and of itself of having this conversation with you, I just believe coming open-hearted and open-minded to everything, and we'll kind of see how it goes.
How are you different than you were before your husband's passing? Has there been any blessings? Is there anything that has happened that you say, well, this wouldn't have happened had I
actually tell myself that almost daily. When talking with people about grief, it's really hard to sometimes talk about those blessings. It's hard to talk about there being gifts in grief, that there are gifts in going through something so traumatic that completely rips your heart out and shatters your life as you know it. How can there be any sort of blessing in that? But I think that is so powerful in the healing process of looking at it from a really raw place of hurt and pain, but being able to see and recognize some of those gifts. And not at all diminishing all of the hard things, but being able to recognize those gifts and being able to hang on those a little bit really makes the rest of it go a little bit easier. When my husband was here, I was a bit more type A, a lot more type A, actually.
Yeah.
Seriously, type A. But I am so much more go with the flow now.
Mm-hmm.
When you realize you don't have any control over things going on.
And who knows when your last day will be.
Exactly. We don't know if it's going to be the day after Christmas, like it was for my late husband. We don't know if it's going to be 2 weeks from now. We don't know if it's going to be at 40. We don't know if it's going to be at 99.
Right.
We are doing ourselves a disservice if we are not living fully and loving fully every single day. Not in fear that that day is coming, but just so that when that day gets here, we can look back and know that we had every ounce of goodness in our lives that we could have.
I love that. I think because my mom died so young, I feel like I've been trying to live out loud, my whole life. She was only 46. I worried about being 46 from 18, and now I'm 53. And I think, wow, what a blessing every year is. And every time I have a birthday, I'm like, another one. That's so awesome. We get to be a year older. This is so exciting.
All the growth, all the wisdom that comes in that next year.
Yes.
The wisdom that we possess at 50 versus 40 versus 30 versus 20. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm the best version of myself right now. I'm the best version of myself right now.
Definitely. I actually think that too about my mom, that I wonder what she would have been like had she have some more growth. I wonder what kind of woman she would have blossomed into, because I'm different than I was last week. Forget last year. If somebody didn't want to join a group, was there a book you read that really helped you a lot that you could recommend, or a few books? Or anything that really resonated with you, though, in particular?
The Surrender Experiment, The Universe Has Your Back from Gabby Bernstein. Anything Gabby Bernstein I've clung on to. There's a book out there called It's Okay That You're Not Okay by Megan Devine. And I know a lot of widows really love this book because it really validates that it's really okay to be in pain. It's okay to have a crappy day. It's okay. It's okay if all you did today was breathe. It's okay if you didn't want to get out of bed, because that is part of the process. And every step of the journey is something to be proud of. But there's so much shame that comes with that from society, from those who haven't gone through the experience themselves.
Right. I just did a coaching session. This was a few weeks ago. Sometimes my best version of myself is this lovely, gracious woman. But sometimes I'm an immature, bratty little girl. I don't know if it's embarrassed. Well, I'm embarrassed about that. And it's not what I want for myself. But she helped me see that those feelings are okay too. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay not to always be your best version of yourself, which was so beautiful. And for some reason that really just opened up my mind that I am all those things. I am sometimes the bratty little girl, and she's okay. She needs to just be acknowledged.
Yes. All of those things are who we are as humans. We have to feel bratty. We have to feel secure. We have to feel mad. We have to feel sad. We're humans. That's part of our experience. On the days where I feel like I don't want to get out of bed, okay, I give myself permission to be there. And that permission in and of itself is growth.
Right. Exactly.
It is awareness. I am honoring exactly where I am. We are taught that we should only ever be the best version of ourselves.
I love the sentence that your feelings have a right to life.
Yes.
And you can still be a lovely human being with having negative feelings.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this conversation. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thank you too, Hara.
Bye.
All right. Bye.